Hey, Mind Health and Wellness with LeJune. This is PTSD month as well as Men's Health Awareness Month. Have some amazing people here. We have Vernon P. Davis Jr., we have Kima Bolokai, and soon we will have Michael White. He's having some technical issues. So we are going to get started. Vernon, can you introduce yourself? I have Vernon on in 2022.
Yes.
Vernon also like Tamika, because he knows Tamika and Christian as well, how they were able to reverse their diabetes. And we'll get into that a little later on his story of how he found out. Just to kind of bring awareness to other men. So, Vernon, can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Lejeune. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Vernon P. Davis Jr. I'm a health educator. I run a company called Morsel Medicine, where we focus on teaching nutrition education, education from a metabolic health standpoint. We teach the how and the why behind the decisions that are made for our nutrition, for our sleep, for our movement, and for our recovery, so that people can make a well-informed decision for their long-term health.
All right. Kima was on in, was it May or April? Well, you're on for both. But if you can give a background on yourself for the people who don't know you.
Well, it's glad to be back again. I'm Kama Bolokai. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and nationally certified counselor. And I am with Onyx Therapy Group, and I do all things therapy. I love to empower women. I love to empower people that look like us, right? I'm giving them an outlet to understand what that therapeutic journey looks like. So I am here for support, and I'm here to just, be a listening ear as well.
All right, Vernon, can you tell the people, because we met in 2022 at a book signing in Atlanta, just hearing his story, and also he and I are both from Louisiana, and how the challenge is for individuals in the South, the mindset of we just eat and you gonna die something anyway, and it don't matter type mindset. Before we start, we're gonna introduce Michael White. Michael, thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you give the
My
people
apologies. Thank you for your patience.
no problem. Can you give a background on, well, introduce yourself to the people?
My name is Michael White. I have been an advocate for total health, mental health specifically, because that's what I have seen a lot of for many, many years. And through my own personal and familial um, battles with mental health, I have seen how all the aspects of health collectively contribute to my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, the health of my relationships. All of those things feed the mind, the seed of mental health. Um, but I'm a fifth generation Washingtonian parent. My family all lives here, and uh, that's it. I'm just hoping we can reimagine collectively our approach to mental health. It's come a long way in the last few years, but we still got some ways to go.
Very, very true. All right, Vernon. If you can, tell the people, like I was saying, the mindset of individuals in the South is you gonna die of something anyway, so you might as well just eat and pop them pills and keep it moving. So, can you kind of tell the individuals your story of how you came about of finding out you were type 2 diabetic and making that transition into reversing it?
Yes, ma'am. And so, just to clear it up for the people, when Lejeune says popping pills, she's referring to prescription
Different
medication.
drug.
All right. So, but yeah. So
The
I
band
grew up.
aid.
Yeah, the Band-Aid, exactly. The Band-Aid. So I grew up in a time and in a community, and I love my family dearly, where we were taught to, eat what was put in front of us, finish our plate, don't let anything go to waste. You couple that with, hey, this is what we have access to, or what we are familiar with, and there is the diet foundation of what was consumed on a daily basis. As I grew older, and I can even be an emotional person, I'm in tune with who I am. Sometimes I drown my emotions in food or sugary drinks. And you take that and fast forward it to 2020, when I found out I was type 2 diabetic after coming off of a road trip, going to see one of my best friends and her husband get married in Michigan. And on that road trip, symptoms crazy. Didn't know what they were, but I experienced frequent urination so bad I had to pull over on the side of the highway to use a restroom because I couldn't make it to the next exit to go to a gas station. Um, Mouth was dry. I could never quench my thirst. Had different pains throughout my body, specifically around and near the abdomen area and the lower back, as well as blurred vision in my left eye and neuropathy on the left side of my body, where my body would tingle and feel numb on the entire left side at random times. And when I got back off of that trip, went to the clinic, got that devastating news. I cried because in my mind, my life was about to be over. Growing up hearing about diabetes, referred to as the sugars, you can expect to lose vision in one or both of your eyes, or you could expect to be in a position where you had to have a limb cut off to preserve the rest of your body for a specific amount of time. And you could also expect to take injections of prescription medication or pills. And so that's what was running through my mind when I found out that I was type 2 diabetic with an A1C over 15.5, a fasted blood glucose level of 476. Doctors told me I should have went to the emergency room, and I chose not to. I ended up going to CVS to get a prescription filled. And as I was waiting on that prescription to be ready for me, I remember going on my phone, my iPhone, and looking up the side effects of the medication that they recommended that I take. And as I read, I figured, hey, this is actually a lot worse than the things that I'm already experiencing now, what the side effects would lead to. What I was already dealing with was bad enough. And so, I chose to be stubborn, go against doctors' orders, their recommendations. And I said, I'm going to figure out how to get rid of this and improve my body on my own without the prescription medication. I know that this is an option. And you know what? If I'm not successful, I'll come back to it, but I at least have to give it a try. And so I had two friends of mine. One was a personal trainer. Other one was at the time an aspiring herbalist. He is a herbalist now, well versed in all things plants and how to use them to heal the body. With the help of them two men, as well as the support of my family and my friends, I was able to make some very very drastic changes in my life. I stopped consuming sugary drinks, soda, and juice. Haven't had it since the day I was diagnosed. As time went on, I learned to juice my own fruits and vegetables to make my own juice. But as far as store-bought juice, haven't had it. I learned that the inflammation in my body is the culprit here. But what produces the inflammation in my body? My sleep schedule was horrible, so I learned to go to bed early. What I thought was for kids, it's actually very very helpful for me as a grown man. I was 30 years old at the time. It's probably helpful for every other adult. Going to bed at a decent time, but also getting a good quality sleep. 7-8 hours is what I was aiming for. Some nights I was getting 9 to 10 hours. But I would get up early the next morning as well, 4, 5, 6 a.m. to go and work out. And what I found with having consistent bedtimes, going to bed at a decent hour and getting quality rest, not drinking sodas and juices anymore, sticking to water, specifically spring water, consuming primarily fruits and vegetables at at my meal times and for my snacks, and then eating within a certain time window, I started noticing the symptoms go away. The blurred vision I was experiencing in my left eye, it wasn't present anymore. It was only the stigmatism that I've had for 20 plus years. The neuropathy on the left side of my body wasn't there anymore. In fact, there was starting to show a little bit more room in my clothes, not only on the left side of my body, throughout my entire body as I wore my clothes. And so weight was actually falling off, which I know it was needed, but it wasn't a primary focus, but it was a byproduct of changing my life and my lifestyle. But what was most important to me was my blood sugar number decreased. My A1C level decreased. And in 6 months' time, I dropped over 10 points on my A1C. My fasted blood glucose level dropped to 93, which I was very, very excited about. And I felt the strongest I'd ever felt in my life, but also felt the healthiest that I ever felt in my life up until that point. And from there, I chose to write a book about my story called Uncomfortable Peace, where it details, the ins and outs of my entire journey. And then a year after that, I wrote another book called Morsel Medicine, where I detail all the foods that I consumed on a daily basis, some of them on a weekly basis, and the why behind it. You see, we got caught up in our youth, and I'm referring to myself and my siblings, where if it tasted nasty, I didn't want anything to do with it. But I've learned to embrace the bitter vegetables. Specifically, the bitter, the better they are for my body. And so once I learned what was good for my body and what the foods that I didn't like, what they did for my body, it made it easier to consume them, to push past the taste or the negative taste, and really having to tame my tongue in that way in order for me to live as best quality of life as I could for however many years I had remaining on this earth. And by the grace of God, I'm still here. I didn't want to dig an early grave for myself, and I also didn't want to be miserable for however long I was still alive. And as the years pass, I realized, hey, I need to get some credentials because I want to help others. Right? I want to help others understand what it is that I did, the science and research behind it, because I spent a lot of hours up at night, on the weekends, and sometimes during the day on my lunch break, just looking up information, trying to figure this thing out. And everything that I found, I was able to put in practice in some shape, form, or fashion in efforts to heal my body. But I also realized that I'm not the only person that has struggled with this, that has dealt with this, that has needed to make such a change. And so, let me find a way to be able to help others efficiently and effectively. And as I attempted to have clients, people that I have been able to assist with lowering their blood sugar, lowering their A1C level, improving their cholesterol, improving their daily habits. I decided to get some credentials, and so that's what led me to my PhD program, where I am in the dissertation phase of that program, and hoping to be done here in the next 2 to 3 months. But I also started a business called Morsel Medicine because I realized that this is my passion, and I've always had a desire to help others. But for many years, I struggled with, man, what am I going to do to help them and also be able to take care of myself and my family and my family's future? And so Morsel Medicine was born. And in addition to the different things that we teach related to lifestyle and wellness, we also have a portion control plate that is accompanied by recipe cards for each section. And so we effectively are showing people how much food to consume, but also we have the recipe cards that detail what to consume, how to prepare it. We also have lifestyle cards in here, which makes this an entire wellness system. And Lejeune, since the last time we've talked, having put this together, I can confidently say that this is my life's work. And it is a passion project, if you will. I put my blood, sweat, and tears quite literally into it, not only for myself, but for those that trust me enough to be able to assist them, whether that's family, friends, coworkers, or strangers off the internet. everybody that I've had an opportunity to have conversations with on a consistent basis, to help them get out of their own way in efforts to heal their body and improve the status of their health and their capacity for productivity, which is very, very huge and connected to our health and our lifestyle. If we're trucking along, that's great, but are we productive? And if we are, what is our capacity for productivity? If it is 47% because our phone wasn't charged up, we weren't charged up like our phone needs to be, we're not going to be good come midday. We experience those crashes and those burnouts. But with the right lifestyle, that's less likely to happen, so that we can take care of the things that we need to take care of in efforts to provide for those that are dependent on us.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that because I've seen a black man, especially a black man from the South. Um, that's huge because we need that in our community, that this can be reversed. We can make changes. Because I picked up a guy who was morbidly obese who
Mm,
said he had a heart attack and a stroke, and he was in his 60s. And I'm like, you can change your diet and your mind, and we're about to get into that with Michael, with your mental when it comes to your health, because I think we don't really realize how our mental, and Kima and I talked about that when you were on, how the mental, your nutrition, all affects your health. And it is, we have to really start looking at all of those things are connected, because a lot of us think my mental is totally different than my
mm,
emotional, than my physical, than my spiritual. They're all connected. What you decide to eat when you're stressed out, it's all connected. So, Michael, from your experience of how the mental health and the physical health ties in, and I'm sure you see that all the time in what you do.
I do, and I know Vernon has experienced this as well. On the other end of that, um, so many things that you said, nail on the head. The difficulty in that sometimes comes that in that many times people have to have a life event to come to that epiphany.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, how do we get things in front of that? And why do most diets fail? Not because they don't have good goals, but because they suck. You know what I mean? Like, it's uncomfortable. You don't we haven't enough discipline to overcome the bitterness. You know what I mean? And so learning what you said, how much to eat and how to prepare it, because good health, 99% of what I consume, I cook. I
Yeah.
cook basically every day, and I don't fry often. I don't like. There's nothing that I don't eat pork and I don't eat shellfish. But outside of that, I eat everything, but in a level of moderation that is appropriate. The entire um, digestive system is so long, and some things take a long time to break down. So if I'm eating a steak today, right, and then a burger tomorrow, that stuff is just piling up. And
Yep.
the all of these, from the esophagus to the small intestine, large intestine, colon, stomach, like all of these, they hold for a minute, they boom, and then they disseminate, and it's going down, but it begins to pile up. So how to cook it is as important, because the journey of good physical bodily health can be enjoyable. And I know this because food is one of my love languages. That is how so like my dad has his own health issues, right? And everyone's like, you should do this and you should do that. But who's going to make the man food? Who's going to,
Mm,
when he's ripping and running the streets, who's going to do all that? It's easy to say, oh, you should, you should. So what do? I cook. I cook, and I cook for my dad. You know, I was doing that for a long time, but until he had an event, he was not really in the space, because like most people, you just live in life. If it tastes good, eat it. Do the peels, do the thing. It's not like a bad thing. It's not a judgment. It's a conditioning. It's a cultural thing that we've grown up in.
yeah.
And but um, I raised my kids in that way. Like, we ate at the table together every day. And I said, as you get older, I know it sucks. You know, you think you want to go out to McDonald's and you think you want to do it, but all of the friends that was going out all the time, they all wanted to come over my house and eat, over our house and eat. right? They enjoyed the food. But as they got older, they started to see how their health was very different than their friends' health, even their like experience in the world, their mental health. Um, the body has a finite amount of energy. And so mental health processes take a lot. Physical processes take a lot. Emotional processes take a lot. So in lining things up, you know, it's all like a chain. Like Lejeune said, they're all connected. And one weak link in a chain makes the whole thing rocky. And it doesn't make it a terrible, destroyed thing, but it does make it difficult.
Yeah.
But with mental health, just like physical health, I think it's good to really have a goal in mind, right? Some things are hard to approach because it doesn't seem like there will be an end. You know, maybe someone can't fathom how they can go to bed early, wake up early, get a lot of sleep, put the phone down, do these things. But I imagine you probably have been able to shift the amount that you sleep and the amount that you eat. After you have created a new baseline, you don't have to be as heavy-handed in its execution, right? Or do you still do the same with your eating, with your sleeping? Are you still getting like 8-10 hours?
Well, for the last 6 months, it hasn't been what I wanted to be due to this dissertation that I work on in the evening after my son goes to sleep. But even that was planned for. But prior to that, yeah, I stuck to the same routine as often as I could on a daily basis, unless something came up, something at work where I was needed I'm on call 24/7. But for the most part, I tried to keep the same routine, and not because it was comfortable, because I knew it worked.
That's right. And then now that you have this dissertation with the new baseline that you've created, you're not waking up with 47%.
Right.
So now you can readjust that if you want. We are all unique. We have our own physiological makeup. We are all like a fingerprint. If I put my finger on a thing and it gets dusted and run through a database, it's only going to come back to one person. And that's the same of our unique individual person, human makeup as well. We are all unique. Maybe we are not the only one that experiences everything we experience. We're never the only one, but the exact sequence and collection of those experiences is unique. That's our nurture, with mental health, right? There is a difficulty in that, which is that it is hard, like the physical thing. It's hard. It takes effort. It takes deliberateness. Sometimes, like you said, uncomfortableness, discomfort. But I think starting to look at what the ultimate goals are. Like, I want to have good mental health is good. But to what end? What am I going to do? Like, you said, I want to create something for the people that trust me, for myself, for my family, right? So that is, that's the North Star that is guiding you. And it makes you accountable to yourself. I want to say it's like Aristotle or something. One of the old philosophers said, greatness is habit. It's not action, it's habit, right? So what we are what we continually do. That's what the algorithm is. The algorithm is the consistency that we put. What do we feed? That's what grows. What do we look at? That if I open any of my social media, what I see on my feed is a reflection of what I engage with. There's a lot of things that don't come on my feed because if it comes, I don't have the bandwidth for that, and the same is true in life, so starting to shift the focus from what the problems are, right? That middle ground that we have, the energies of like gratitude. Right? Gratitude is a very powerful force. Love, I am often the one to reach out to my people and just out of the blue, like, what are you grateful for today? just to start shifting the focus, because the mind, we shifting away from the screens for periods of time, not scrolling but reading, right? Not watching TV but meditating. It's not always easy to see the long-term benefits of what that would do, how that would help to completely restructure what is going on in the mind. 4 of the 5 human physical senses are plugged directly into the brain. It's ready to be processed immediately. And we're in a culture where it's being fed constantly, and not being fed anything that we necessarily want, but what someone else wants us to see, wants us to hear. I want you to hear my music. I want you to watch my show. I want you to engage in my conversation. So it's coming in, and it's creating a lot of chatter. The brain don't make nothing up. It takes it all in, spins it around, sends it to the mind makes thoughts. So if the thoughts are a lot, it's because there's a lot going in constantly. I read every day, physical books, I meditate, and I have found that, like changing my sleeping habits and really being mindful of my circadian rhythm, how all of that affects my intuitive abilities, and and even like our waking hours, the mental power that you have to couple with your physical prowess in getting through this dissertation is going to certainly make the end product crazy, mind-blowing. I can hear it. I can, if there's even a fraction of what you are talking about, because you said it's your passion, it's your love, your heart is in it, So in that same vein, one of the biggest portals to good sound mental health is boundaries, right? It's not no for the sake of no, but it's ultimately understanding that the texture of my life is important too. Every single thing that I do so well. And I put every ounce of energy that I have into it. Because when I say yes, I mean it. Every time. I don't say yes and they're like, God damn, why? You know what I mean? Not anymore. And I used to do that. But then I realized that that boundary, right? Just like I said, refocusing how I view things, reimagining how things are looked at. When I say no, it's not because I don't want to. I always want to. But if I don't have the bandwidth, if I don't have the time, and I say no, if I say yes, I probably will half-ass it. I probably won't be able to give as much as I would if I meant yes. And if I say no, I could very well be leaving that space open for someone who does mean yes and will contribute to that thing that person needs in a much more powerful way. And the boundary for me is the ultimate act of self-love, self-care.
Yep.
Right? You get on the airplane and the flight attendant gets in front. They say, if we have an emergency, mask all the people you possibly can, and then maybe if you got time, stick one on your. No. Because you might mask 1 or 2, but if you mask yourself, you might lose 1, but then you can mask like 30 other people who are panicking. You're like, hey, chill out. Hey, chill out. Right? So the boundary helps me understand. It helps me to segment my own energy, to reserve that. I, as a nurturer, a carer, an empath, I'm sure there are a few of that in this group. We all want to help all the time. Every time we see a problem, we want to fix it. But it is wisdom to know what is ours and what is not ours. I'm always willing to help people, but they will always have to do something.
Yep.
I won't do it for you, but I will do it with you. Even if I got to do 80%, your ass better be doing all of that 20% though, 100%. You know what I mean? You better be doing all of it.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to get through this, and eventually it's going to tip. I'm not going to have to do it forever. Eventually, the momentum comes on its own. Just like eating healthier. Like, you enjoy eating, right?
Oh yeah.
Victor, ladies, I'm sorry. very passionate about all of this as well. But
Hey,
do y'all cook? Lejeune Gamer?
Well, I cook. I like cooking. I like food. I'm a foodie.
Uh,
Definitely something, the enriched food, not the processed food, right? Um,
mm-hmm.
so yes, I like to cook.
Mm-hmm. Good. It's important to enjoy cooking, to enjoy the whole process. So the but the boundaries is good for the mental, the emotional, the physical. A lot of the tools to really strengthening those are buried under the screens, the constant things going on, and the day to day life.
Right.
You know, um, but the boundaries help to give me time as well.
Hmm.
I watch my dad is a prime example of that. He always says yes, but it burns him out. I don't say don't do it. I say if you're going to do it, make sure that's your choice, because it's too easy to turn into a martyr,
Mm.
Mm,
right? To
yeah.
give so much. So, okay, so there we go. That's where it circle back. It's important to know what is ours and what is not ours. So, in not becoming a martyr, right? I am confident, right? Anyone who feels led, compelled to help, there is a way to do that, like Victor said, to help them while also still making sure I am taking care of this,
Right.
you know, because everyone won't want help. And that's not a judgment. It's just a blanket observation, something to know when we want to help people. I want to help people all the time, but it becomes very clear to me early on who wants help and who just wants things to change and everything to be fine without them having to make
Mm.
any sacrifices or any changes to their habits or lifestyle. That becomes clear early, and then I don't have to get upset with them, but I also don't have to expend the energy helping.
Yeah.
How will I know that they want help? Because they will be doing their part. That entire 20%, they'll be doing it. And all of these things in conjunction um, are creating, good overall total health. And as they start to balance out each and every one of them, they align and everything does become clearer. Now,
Right.
so I'm gonna shift a little bit real
okay,
quick.
we're gonna pause
Oh,
because
I'm sorry.
you're kind of stepping ahead, and for individuals who are trying to get to the point of boundary and change and things like that, you're adding a whole bunch of layers that everybody's not there yet. And it takes time for each individual. As Vernon said, it took for him to go to the pharmacy and Google what the side effects of that medicine was for him to make those changes. And it's not always a overnight process, because when it comes to boundaries, what does boundaries look like? If your mindset is not in a place of making those changes, that's not going to happen. And we have to be realistic, especially with our community, because we don't have examples. We don't know what that looks like. We don't have anybody to talk to. We can't go to our friends because our friends are doing the same shit we doing. So it has to be realistic of what steps to take. What does that look like for each individual? Because each individual, we're different. Kima works out every day. Right now, I can't really work out because I was in car accidents. So my mind process and my thought process is totally different. And especially looking at men who are taught not to cry, not to show emotion. You're carrying the world on your shoulder. They find, they try to find an outlet through alcohol, getting high, or whatever their method is to try to deal. So we have to move to reach them at that level and not kind of looking at it from where we are. So, you're kind of going fast and we don't have much time. And we also want to hear from Kima as well, with her experience working with male clients, because Kima and I have met at PSI and we work with a lot of male clients who were struggling with so many levels of trying to maintain family and trying to, deal with homelessness, trying to deal with the world. So, Kima.
So I will say this, like just to kind of circle and kind of bring it all together, like when we're talking about the eating habits, when we're talking about boundaries and how we can get to that point, right? I think, to Michael's point, to understand where a person is in their life, in this moment is important. So you touched on something, Lejeune, when you talk about um, because I know this is PTSD month, and so I said I would just kind of focus on the clinical part of things. Um, but I think especially with our Black men, right? We have two Black men on this call right now that have experienced something, right? Whether it was a car accident, whether it was homelessness, grief, or whatnot, something they've experienced. Now, I can't speak to Vernon as to, how he acquired diabetes, right? That's his story, that's his journey. And it may be genetics, I don't know, or it may be something traumatic that possibly had happened to him. So when we talking about the eating and how, the emotional eating and how we show up in that space. So, to kind of think about Black men in general and experiencing PTSD, um, their trauma and their experience looks totally different than us, Lejeune, as Black females. um, so a lot of the masking, or yeah, the masking of symptoms, right? So this is kind of talking about how do we unmask those symptoms in the Black male community. There's different societal pressures that men are experiencing. That suppression of vulnerability. you know what does that look like? How does that show up? It looks different. Instead of, for typically, I'm just example, not saying all Black women, but or women in general, um, but showing up sad, right? Hyper vigilant, some physical symptoms. For men it can look different. It can, society, it can look different for men. And so what that could be is, some of the things that you touched on, Lejeune, the substance abuse, masking it with that, pushing people away. What are we taught? What is taught to men in our society? You got to be strong. You can't cry. You can't show any of those things. So you push a lot of those things down, and that lack of communication and boundaries come into place because we are not. And I'm saying we, as as if I'm a man, because I'm speaking collectively in this space, but are taught that or may have seen or learned that this is how it's supposed to be. So when we talk about healthy eating, or we talk about how to interact with people, or how to even create a boundary, that's not there due to that learned behavior. And so, Black men do face barriers, because then if we're looking at systematically, right, that trauma, that generational trauma, um, we're not taught to, access healthcare. I'm not going to the doctors. I got this. I'm gonna take care of it. I got this. And so a lot of, Black men do not go to the doctors. I know, Michael, we were talking about this like a while back. Like, you know, nobody, Black men don't like to go to the doctors, there's a fear there, right? And so, but also we have to create that safe space to be able to allow them to be able to open up and express what that looks like, or how they feel. We also, the masking of not just substance use, but also workaholic. No, I got to work. I got to take care of my family. I got to make sure that my family has this, I has this. Um, I was talking about this with someone the other day. How is it that when Mother's Day comes, right? Everybody Everybody be like up in arms about Mother's Day. Oh, doing all these things. Even the mothers that don't have, men in their children's life, they're giving accolades to the mother. But when it's time for Father's Day, right? Not everybody, but it's not as a worldwide huge event. So how do you think a black man is going to feel about that? Like, now I'm not saying all, right? I'm not saying that at all, because there are some people that honor their kings in their life. Their children honor their fathers. There's people that have great relationships. But overall, in our society, Father's Day is not as big as Mother's Day. So a lot of our Black kings do face, some type of extra additive, like I expressed, pressure to perform. So that withdrawing, that substance abuse using, or that always at the office or working, 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 when do they have time to create boundaries to balance that so that they can feel supported, loved, and, vulnerable to say, you know what, I'm gonna go take care of myself, not to when it gets to the point like Vernon was saying, where his eyes are blurry, or he's having other issues, not to that extreme, but as a regular checkup. So then when we talk about how Mike was talking about these boundaries, that is being intentional. That's my favorite word. So being intentional about setting up boundaries for yourself, what that looks like is different for everybody, totally different. So I'm going to throw it back to the kings here. We got two, kings on here. How are you showing up for yourself? Right. Because this, the people are listening, and how can we balance that, and what does that look like in your life?
Okay,
You go
Vernon.
for it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, you know, as I'm listening, I'm thinking about insecurities. And there is an idea of turning our insecurities into strengths, not necessarily for ourselves, but for those who also have them. So, how do I show up for myself? Well, it started with being okay that I had fears, as you may have mentioned earlier, and expressing those fears. We are taught at an early age, typically men, specifically black men, you don't talk about what you're afraid of. You push through it. You don't talk about what you're struggling with. You push through it. Everybody doesn't need to know your business, and that's taught in the black household, not just to men. Everybody doesn't need to know your business, but if people don't know what's going on, especially those you spend a significant amount of time with, how can they help you or encourage you through something drastic or traumatic that is building up? And so showing up for ourselves is first identifying what we are. It is okay to have insecurities and fears. What's not okay, and again, this is what we're taught, is not expressing those to our inner circle. Now the question becomes, in efforts to show up for ourselves, who do we surround ourselves with? You surround yourselves with people that are not going or doing what you see for yourself long term, you're less likely to achieve what it is you truly desire, even if you haven't expressed it. But if you surround yourself with, and we're talking for men here, if you surround yourself with men that are in places that you want to be, accepting that you have not arrived and you need to learn from somebody else, you need to lean on somebody else that is stronger in these areas, you're more likely to achieve what it is you're looking for. And so I use myself for an example. Great friend of mine, Tony Lee, was a physical dominant person, can do 50 pull-ups straight if he wanted to, can do 100 dips straight if he wanted to. Took very, very great, and still does. He's a police officer now. Takes great care of himself from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint, just all around. That's one of the first people I called when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And then my good friend Breon, who months prior to my diagnosis had just healed his own body of whatever ailment he was struggling with using natural herbs. And I remember seeing it on a Facebook post, which made me call him. And so having to get on the phone, choosing to get on the phone with both of those men and express to them what was going on with me, expressing to them symptoms that I haven't even made mention on this stream, that I don't even think I made mention of in this book, but I do talk about it in private, if you will, with people that I'm working with, with men that I'm working with, because some of those issues are real things that bother men but they aren't talked about a lot. Now, I won't say it on the stream, but being forthcoming with, hey, this is what's going on in great detail, and then asking for help. And so after doing that and getting to the points where I am now, where one could say, oh, you're successful in the sense of doing what you accomplished, can't ride on yesterday's success. And so in efforts to continue to show up for myself, I go to bed at a certain time. If I'm not choosing to work on my dissertation, or I don't get called into my full-time job in the wee hours of the night, me and my little boy, we going to bed between 7 and 8 p.m. at night. And I'm getting up between 4 and 5 a.m. so I can go to the gym. It is not glamorous, but that's how I show up for myself and start my day off right. I know that I've put in my healthy deposits for the morning, not for the day, but for the morning, taking care of myself, getting a good workout in. And then, I tell people I eat pancakes and eggs every day, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But then when I tell them what the pancakes are made of, conversation change, facial expression change. Oats and plantains. That's how I make my pancakes. Have that every day. So now, I'm starting my, I'm eating something that's going to be nourishing to my body. And that's not, not to mention the watermelon that I have in the mornings, or my morning recovery drink that I make that's not powdered and not synthetic and not going to cause constipation and increase inflammation in my body, which does a lot of things that are marketed to us. But also showing up for ourselves is understanding that just like anybody that's on a spiritual journey tries to limit what they hear because of how it can shape the thoughts of their mind, the ideas of their mind, also being mindful of what we watch and listen to as it relates to what we do with our body, what we put into our body, how we take care or lack thereof, how we move our body, being mindful of that, because all that stuff can be a distraction. And so again, showing up for myself is really being vulnerable, being disciplined, pushing past any laziness I could feel, doing the things that I know are going to yield me, to the best of my abilities, sustainability, and presence for not only myself, but for those that depend on me, and including others in that as well. So I'm not just keeping it to myself.
All right, Michael.
You hit the nail on the head right in the beginning too. Well, several times, but right in the beginning, community. Who do we surround ourselves with? That is the biggest support system, because we cannot think our way out of mental health issues. We cannot feel our way out of emotional health issues, and we cannot eat our way out. Well, it's the doing. It is the because that is the inner voice is running whatever it's running until we can give it another script. But surrounding it by people who are doing what you want to do in places where you want to be, and then having those kinds of surroundings can be very supportive. I have my ringer on my phone. I turned it off during this, but my ringer is always on. All I really like, there's no magical thing that's going to get any of this done. All we can each individually do is our best. I make myself available. I say, anybody who has my number, I say, call me anytime, day or night. If you don't call, if you're like, oh, I thought you were asleep, that's on you. If you feel it and you call. And I am available, right? Because that is important too for people who are trying to make changes. If they don't know exactly what changes they want to make or exactly how to go about making the changes, right? Reaching out and having someone and finding those communities. I'm sure there are. I'm not in like a lot of social media groups, Facebook groups, but I know there are groups that exist for different people with different kinds of experiences, and because we can't chase everyone down that wants to grow, that wants to change, that wants to heal. They can't all be chased down. They have to come to, they have to reach out and do the thing that's going to establish um, that. I will. I don't know if we can do this, but I'll throw my email address on here, and anybody can reach out to me anytime. Because people always have questions, and there's not always a clear place to go. For those, and then underneath the hustle and bustle of the day to day, it gets lost. It gets pushed off till tomorrow. Till tomorrow. So what we can do to help anyone is just be available. What Obama said, right? Be the change, be the thing, be whatever the thing is that we feel is necessary, and yes, be honest about all of it's not like airing your business out, but in my day, right? My parents, my aunts and uncles, grandparents.
You are not that old.
I know. I think y'all are probably my the same age. Maybe
talk about in my day. You are not that old.
I think y'all might be old. Y'all might be younger than me, and the experience might be different. I don't know, but like they didn't tell me anything, right? Everybody acted like everything was fine. So when I became an adult, and I had issues, I thought something was wrong with me. And if that wasn't the case, if they would have been more open about some of the things, and not, like I said, not telling all their business, but like you know what, I am having difficulty. I don't really like my job that much, and I don't know what else to do. Instead of just wearing the mask all the time, then I would have been like, oh, other people experience that. By being honest, by being open, by saying the things, we may find that other people around us experience that as well, and may have something to contribute and something to learn from us as well.
So, like, as a Black man, like, how do you know what to look for? Like, I think that's, one of the things, because it's always good to have that self actualization or be on that self journey as a Black man to be like, okay, these are things that I'm going to overcome. However, if I'm not taught that, right, and that's not what I'm seeing on a regular basis, like, I don't have those role models. So in our day, we can say that we didn't have as many great Black role models, male role models, that were walking this walk that we have chosen, right, and been intentional about doing now, so that for the next generation, they can have it a little bit more easier, right? And again, I just want to give you both kudos, right, for just being honest and transparent in this space, because again, this is like kind of opening the door to say, hey, Black men, you guys can have support groups. I have a colleague, I was just talking to him earlier today, and he asked me, he says, oh, how was your birthday retreat? I was like, oh, it was so amazing. Me and the ladies had a great time. And he was like, me and my homeboys are going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be going and hanging. I was like, y'all do that? I was like, that's awesome. How often do you guys get to do this? And he was like, not often enough. I was like, well, given what's going on with what we going through at work, because I also work for the state of Maryland Department of Juvenile Services. So I was like, I hope you're taking some time off and going to utilize it. He was like, absolutely. And I was like, so what are the things that you guys do? Is it different than what us girls do? Just being nosy, asking questions, just to be funny. But I think more support, again, identifying your circle, right? You can't do this alone. And that's restructuring or reframing our thoughts to say that we can't do this alone. And let me find my support system or my homies or my crew that's going to pour into me, just like I'm pouring into everybody else. Because at the end of the day, we humans. I don't care if we male, females, cat, dog, whatever, moon, sun, we are humans. And we have to pour into others just as much as we want to pour into ourselves. It has to be that revolving, exchange. And I think it's important. So as Black men, again, I, my kings, it is wonderful. So take that. That's all I got.
Somebody asked, what are the first steps? And I know Kima has to go soon, and we
I
may
think
have
Vernon had something. He wanted to say something.
Okay, Bernie.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on having role models and somebody to look up to and talk to. And I'm going to speak from my own experience. This doesn't apply to everyone, but I think everyone can identify somebody that this may apply to, if that makes sense. So I grew up in a loving household, and it took me becoming an adult to understand and accept that. I didn't like everything that happened in my home with my mom and dad. And it's not that it was bad, it was because I wanted things to be my way, right? I didn't like the discipline or the restrictions that they put on myself and my siblings. But as I became an adult, I realized that it was all for my better, for my protection, all of that. And so as far as role models, now my hero, say quick, fast, and in a hurry, is my dad. As I reflect on my upbringing, what I saw him do, and what I didn't see him do. But when I was in the thick of it as a teenager, and even going into my collegiate years, I looked for not just validation, I looked for advice and guidance from other men that I was fortunate enough to be around. They were great men, but they weren't my dad. And it's no knock to them. My dad is an amazing man. And so I say that to say that for our youth, our young boys, our teens that are going to grow up and be black men in society, with or without biological dad in their life, they have to be okay with finding and seeing truth in who their father figure is first, and accept that their father figure, whether it's biological dad or non-biological, is there to help them grow and mature, versus looking outside of their home or outside of their father figure for advice and guidance from other men. And in most cases, and this is from my experience, conversations that I wish I would have had, or things that I wish would have been expressed to me at a younger age, I wasn't getting that from those men. And it's not because they didn't want to share those things or have those conversations with me. They were having those conversations with their own sons. And so, I think about one of the things that fuels me to produce a solid, stable young black man that's going to go off into society one day without me physically being there. I'm talking about my son. Is I reflect on what I now know and accept of my amazing dad and who he is, and be that, and do my best to express and show that at an early age. Okay with showing my emotions and speaking about how I feel. Okay with having hug sessions, or just I kiss on my son. I do. I love him to death. That is my heartbeat. And I'm not saying my dad didn't do that, but it wasn't as often as I reflect on my life that I wish I would have had. And I want my son to be comfortable enough with me that he can be vulnerable and not feel like I'm going to judge him or look down on him or chastise him, that which would cause him to clam up and not share anything with me, and try to go find somebody outside of our home, outside of our relationship, to confide in and get advice from. And that advice can be good or bad, and it could direct him down the path that I don't want to see him on. And for those that have experienced that have ended up in places they didn't want to be, they probably would sit back and say that, I got a piece of advice from somebody I trusted, somebody I felt cared enough about me, and the advice was bad. I followed it, and it put me somewhere I don't want to be. And so, going back to, talking about role models, as black men, we have to be okay with being for the next generation what we think we didn't have, or what we know we didn't have, knowing what we know now, because it's not getting easier. It is quite honestly getting tougher. 20 years ago, things looked way different from my vantage point with my four eyes. I don't know about for the next man, but for me, I wish I could go back 20 years. Times feel like they were simpler. It felt like they were a bit easier, especially if I can go back with the knowledge that I have now. But as black men, we have to be okay with being not just vulnerable, but teaching that vulnerability to those that are under our influence. So our sons, maybe our neighbors, our nephews. Coaches have great power in our community and are looked to, and that power has to be exercised outside of the game of, fill in the blank of whatever game. It has to be exercised outside of that, to help navigate our young Black boys who are going to be Black men here very, very shortly.
All right, somebody had a question in the comments. What are the first steps? So I'm not sure if they're asking what's the first steps of when it comes to mindset, boundaries, or what. So, Robert, I'm not really sure what you're asking in turn of first steps. Um, but I do have a question on young men not having father figures or fathers in the home, because I've worked for the health department and unfortunately seeing young men who didn't have fathers in the home find that type of love where they're ending up selling themselves for love. And it is, unfortunate, but, sometimes that's the only way they feel like they can get love monetarily. And the realization is no. Also growing up, men weren't as physical as hugging their sons or kissing their sons. It was more of the mom's type role and job with that. And because it didn't want to be perceived as gay, or I don't
Yeah.
want my son being a punk, or I don't want my son to think that this affection is a form of them possibly being gay. So, can you guys kind of talk on that? Because Vernon, you just kind of mentioned that with your son that you do show him love and affection, which is great. So he doesn't go somewhere else where somebody lures him in when he's older and it turns into a sexual thing. So, Michael, can you kind of talk about that from your standpoint? And Robert wanted to know what's the first steps in building boundaries, but we'll get back to that. Um,
The sad reality is there is no easy answers to any of this. Everyone's going to have their own experience. Some young men will be in positions where they will have role models, and some will not. Some young men will have homes in which they have that maternal love, and some will not. And um, having being the example, right? That's what you said, Vernon, right? That's what I'm saying. Be the example of what it is, right? If whatever I say, it would be beneficial to the community, to the young people, to you know, it is my responsibility to be that, right? And be that for whoever comes, because young people come in all shapes, sizes, and even ages. I have men that are older than me that come to me because they've never had certain kinds of conversations with a father type figure. Um, um, but when we have every time we have that opportunity, right, to have that understanding, right, wearing that in the front, right, whatever, every single thing that I think that my dad should have did for me and should have been for me, you know, I do that. I am that. And no, not to take anything away from my dad. My dad also is a great guy, but he didn't get it handed to him, so he didn't know how to do it. And sometimes we just get it handed to us and we figure it out. And then we can shift that and hand it to our own sons and then start to proliferate. I've got two sons in their mid-20s and one that's 19. They have no problem calling me crying. I hug them. I love them. I talk to them all the time, every day, because I want to send strong men into the world that are going to continue to create that ripple effect, be an influence on the next person, whether they have kids or not. Maybe they're a father and they don't deal with their sons in as straightforward or loving or honest a way as they could, and it shifts how they relate with their son. Or someone doesn't have kids, but I know a lot of people who don't have kids but have a great love for kids. You know, um, but as soon as someone is looking for that role model, that mentorship, as soon as they're looking for it, it begins to come, because we, as I say, we can't go and find everyone that needs it. And even many of the people that need it don't even know they need it yet, or are still hiding behind the mask of not needing it, still putting on the brave face, not crying, taking it on the chin, holding the weight of the world on their shoulders. That's what they feel is their truth. There's it's So all we can do is be gentle. Again, be the example. There's plenty of examples out here, I'm sure we all know them, of people who speak a thing but don't live it. They know all the thing, they give all the good advice, you know but like the cardiologist who sits out behind. I worked for a cardiologist when I was a teenager, and he was just smoked like crazy. And to me, that was already a disconnect. you know um but we're here for them. I know Vernon is.
Okay, Kima had to go because she has a client, but we're gonna get to this last question. What's the first steps in setting boundaries, and what does that look like? For example, for you guys, what's the first step for you, Vernon?
So, great question, Robert. The first step is identifying what is an issue for you. The second step is identifying who is causing that issue for you that makes you even want to think about or consider setting a boundary. And then you got to weigh out the pros and cons of setting such a boundary. Depending on who it is, you may lose access to them, because you're essentially telling them no. That's how they're going to take it. When you say, hey, this is my boundary. I'm okay with this. I'm not okay with that. You're essentially telling them no. They can't do something that they're familiar with doing. They do consistent, or they may do it with everybody. And but you got to be okay with whatever you lose in efforts to gain. And what you're gaining is a greater sense and a deeper level of respect for yourself, but you're also showing that you are worthy of that care and that respect to whomever you're setting the boundary with. And it may not be just one person, it may be your friend group. For me, hey guys, similar to my guy. Hey, you can call me at any time, but just because you call me, I'm not going to answer. And I'm not going to answer because my phone is on do not disturb. And my phone is on do not disturb because I'm a really good friend. I will sit up and talk to you half sleep to help you through whatever you're going through. But what does that do for me? That hinders my recovery for the night. That does not have me ready and prepared to wake up at whatever whatever hour I set to wake up that next morning, 4 or 5 or 6, to go to the gym to put in a certain workout that is going to be beneficial for me for that day and help me towards my long-term sustainability goals for my health. And so that's the boundary. There's also boundaries with how people are to behave in your home. Some people don't like people to have shoes on in their house, and some people are not okay with that. And hey, I'm sorry, family member, friend, whatever. Hey, this is a boundary that I've set because it helps protect my peace, and you have to be okay with protecting your peace.
I like that because I feel like that's true. And it's also not always just friends, it can be family that you may need to set boundaries with because sometimes we may feel like because it's a parent or a sibling and
Ooh.
they're stressing you out, they get on your nerves. It could be some triggers that come up, it could be some past traumas that may come up for you that you haven't dealt with. Every time that you get those calls or text messages or you go to an event and you're questioning yourself, damn, do I really have to go? And if you go, don't stay long, go for 10, 15 minutes and leave, just show your face and leave. Or you can also preserve your peace and not go at all and say, you know what, thank you for the invite, but I'm gonna sit this one out. So that's what boundaries can also look like. Because I kind of feel boundaries are universal, but you also have to look at what's in the best interest for you. It can even be your kids, where you just like, I love this kid, but this kid is hard headed. He or she don't listen. So, and I'm not talking about little kids, I'm talking about adult kids. So
Yeah.
let's make this. But just the reality of that is the first step of preserving your peace. And what does that look like for you? Even when it comes to certain days you may not want to go to work, where you say, you know what, I really need a mental health day. Let me call in. I need to rest. I've been doing too much. My body is calling for it. That's universal for men and women, but we'll go into Michael.
Well, you talk about hard boundaries and soft boundaries. Some are firm and some, you know, give some latitude. I don't have, so my boundary on phone call, that's the second half of it, right? Call me anytime. And if I can answer, I definitely will. If I
Yep.
don't answer, it's because I definitely cannot. That's you know what I mean? But I don't, I wake up around 6:30. I don't have the same rigors. So mine, it can be a little further out. I don't uh, you know the boundaries are nuanced, but I'm still going to be available. So here's one, the beginning of setting boundaries, I would say, right, from my experience and the experience that I've had with the people who have been in my circles, is if it causes a disturbance in me, right? So, then it's something to look at, right? Someone is always asking me to help them, and I always say yes, but every time I'm like, right, that might be an appropriate place to start looking at how to setting a boundary, what kind of boundary to set, and how to set it. Because as you say, it's about, you also have to look at your own peace and balance. If you're helping someone get in balance, but it's throwing you off balance every time, we may have to figure out how to adjust that. So, you know, because if I got to choose between my being balanced and your being balanced, I'm going to select me being balanced. That's a boundary. If I can do it, like I said, every time I say yes, I mean it. So I'm not even worried about what's going to happen. And it comes over time. In the beginning, I say setting boundaries is like the terrible twos. First time someone asks me something, they ask me 1,000 times, and I say no. It's like, no, man. But after it's over, after some time has passed, I'll be like, you know what? I literally never had to say yes to that.
Mm.
You know, but it takes the first time. The first time is always the hardest. And like you say, you might have to lose access to something or someone. But what I have found in time, that I have never lost access to anyone forever. Over time, they came to respect the
Mm.
fact that I respected myself enough. And I'm not like, no, I'm not doing that for you. I'm like, I'm sorry. I would love to, but I can't. That's it. I'm not going beyond that. Why not? I just can't. That's it. And in time, I might be able to readjust that. But everyone has come back, because you know what happens later on? Everyone needs to learn how to set boundaries at some point.
Yep.
So setting boundaries can make you the front runner, can make you the person that people who were mad at you in the beginning now come back and be like, you know what? I see why you did that, and I understand it, because now I'm on the other side of it. Someone is trying to overstep, and I've let them overstep a lot of times, and now I need to swerve that thing. So I appreciate you doing that and for showing me that. So what do I do?
Yeah, because I think all of that is definitely important, but you have to find what works for you and have those conversations. It doesn't have to be combative where, you feel like you about to fight somebody or you need to yell or whatever. You have to say it at your piece of, you know what, this is something I don't want to do. And please respect that. No is is just a complete sentence, no period, and just leave it like that. But this is especially when it. I know I had somebody ask me because I work with women. I also work with kids, and I work with little boys. And this is, and I love my daddy. I'm a daddy's girl. My dad died when I was 6. I have nephews. I have great nephews. I have cousins, male cousins. And my thing is, we as women, we have fathers, we have brothers, we have husbands, we have partners, we have male cousins, we have male uncles. The list goes on and on and on. And 9 times out of 10, sometimes we are the ones that are noticing things about a man in our life, of something that's different when it comes to their health, or encouraging them to go to the doctor, or just getting that checkup. And I wanted to talk about this and have men on because, like I said, I do Uber and I get men all the time from mental health, physical health. Again, that all ties in together. And just hearing them, and these are black men, and hearing them and hearing their pain of, I'm a workaholic, I can't work now because I had a heart attack and a stroke, and learning how to reprogram that mindset is not easy because, as we talked about before, when you're used to doing something for so long, how do you make those changes? How do you pivot? How do you set those boundaries for yourself? I need to show up for me at this point in my life. I need to start loving me, which isn't easy if you've never seen how to love how another man loves himself. It's not easy, especially in our community, because either it's work, 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 getting that money. You see the drinking, you see the getting high, you see everything except for that self love, which isn't easy for most of our men. And Robert, thank you for asking that question. What's the first step? Because that's the questions that men don't ask other men. How do I do that? Because they don't want to be rendered as, that's a dumbass question, nigga. Why you asking me that? That's real talk. Like, that's dumb. Why you asking me them dumb questions? But realistically, how do men find a community like Vernon and Michael? How do they find that? How do they find
Ooh.
a community of self love? Because I'm looking at you men and I see that you guys have self love for yourselves. Most men or other people can't look at that and be like, what's she talking about? Because I see the growth. I see the process that you guys went through as men. So we're going to kind of wrap on that. And then if you guys can tell people how to find you guys, because they need that. I had a chemo was on, and the guy was talking about why is everything about women? Why is there nothing on the topic of men's mental health? At that moment, my platform wasn't for that. So it was on men's health and women's health and mental health. So it was, and it is things out there that you do have to Google and you do have to do your due diligence to research. But where can they find a community for themselves? Not a community that's just talking about sports, not a community that's just, talking about let's play dominoes and cards and games and stuff like that. A real community that helps mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And as what you offer, Vernon, nutritionally. So if you can kind of talk about that.
Yeah. So maybe this would be considered a directive. It's not intended to be, but it is encouragement. We live in a world today where you can get on the phone with someone that, hey, let's just catch up, and they end up trying to sell you a product, and you've wasted an hour of your time on what was supposed to be a casual conversation. Now it's a business pitch for a multi-level marketing whatever. I say that to say because that's a lot of what's out there when people reach out to others to ask for help or time to talk. With that being said, I would highly encourage men that are looking for community to go to places where nonprofits are, people that are a part of nonprofits, divine or otherwise, if you get my drift. One of the best things that I could have done, and it's not that I didn't have community, I just didn't have a big one. I had a few family members, uh, local and afar, and my some of my best friends also local and afar that really held me down. But my life improved exponentially uh, once I joined Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, with like-minded men that are also looking to get the same thing out of life and pour back into others similar things that I have been desiring and am currently doing. So go to places where nonprofits are, and that may mean, men, you have to dress a bit different from what you're used to. That is okay. It is a okay. You don't have to wear a hat everywhere you a baseball cap rather everywhere you go. You don't have to wear jeans everywhere you go. And in search of a community, I'll end my response with this. In search of a community, you have to be okay with people not knowing who you are and potentially judging you. It's not intentional or harsh, but it's more of a somebody trying to make a determination on if you're somebody that they want to converse with and onward. You have to be okay with it. You have to be secure in who you are, knowing who you are, and put yourself out there. Maybe you have to start a conversation. Maybe you can't wait for somebody to approach you. But again, go to where nonprofits are, divine or otherwise. Not just your local church. Churches are great, but not just your local church, but nonprofits that do some of anything that you may find interest in. And it doesn't have to be just sports. There's nonprofits for some of everything, stuff with science, nonprofits that are working with people that remove trees and then plant trees. I mean, it's just some of everything. So find a nonprofit, divine or otherwise.
Okay, and where can they find you for services?
Yes, morsomedicine.org is the best way to find out about who I am and what I do. My email address is also on that website, and then I can also be reached on Instagram, Vernon P. Davis Jr.
Okay. And I love what you said about what you wear, and you thing of it is, people don't like wasting their time with people who are not serious about
Mm,
making changes and transition, because now you're inviting somebody else in your stuff, and you're not showing up, but they're showing up for you. So, of course, they're going to ask questions. It has to be something you're ready for. And if you're not ready for it, have those conversations. You know what? I'm just kind of trying to figure out if this is right for me, because now you have somebody else investing their time
hmm
into trying to help you make a transition in your life that you're saying you want change. And even with therapy, please be honest, man, because I've had friends tell me that they boyfriends don't want the therapy, and they boyfriends were not honest in therapy, and then came back and told them something totally different that they ain't tell their therapist. Have those honest. The therapist is not there to judge you, they're there to help you. So if you're suicidal, have those conversations. I'm having suicidal thoughts. I don't trust myself today. Have those honest conversations. If you don't have those honest conversations, change is not going to happen. And again, it does affect your health. All right, Michael.
Look, y'all hit the two nails on the head. The community is there. It's not here. So getting out, a nonprofit, religious or other, divine or otherwise, social things that are, there are, you know I'm in DC. There's free comedy clubs, free like jazz music, and those are, these are places where you're likely to find social people who are, socially minded. And what, even if you have to be the one to strike up the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people all the time, everywhere I go. If I'm sitting at a bar or at a table, and anybody gives me eye contact, I'm gonna strike up a conversation. Very rarely do I find people like, "Why are you talking to me? I don't want," because you know um, the energy that I put out just, it doesn't do that. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't worry about how someone's going to respond. I already have a sense of whether they're going to engage, whether a little or a lot, and I'm always coming just like this with a smile and openness. And so generally people are like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Well," so go out, find a nonprofit, whether it's just in, worshiping, communing, community service,
Mm.
and yes, go to therapy, see a counselor, or talk honestly and openly, as you were saying earlier, to your circle about things, because it's going to help pull up, the garden of the mind, right? We got to dig up the weeds. We got to dig, pull up a lot of stuff sometimes before we can get to what really is in there. And, you know, if you're a spiritual person, pray on it, reflect on it, meditate on it, and let the divine help. It wants to work with us. Seek and find. So get out there and talk to people.
All right, Michael, where can I find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram. The City Monk Returns. The City Monk Returns.
Okay.
And it's, like Vernon said, I've experienced that too, where I'm hearing from someone and I'm thinking we catching up, and next thing, my, like, this is not for me. This is my life. I see people, clients, in the context of my regular life. It's not. I mean, it's a business, obviously. But it's like my real life, and many of these people are like my friends now. You know.
Oh,
So
yeah, because I as well get that. I get people that will send me messages on LinkedIn and like, oh, I see that we're friends. Let's connect. Let's get to know each other. And then it's a pitch. And it's like, if your service was something I was looking for, I would research it. Trust me. But no, I'm not looking for your service. But I would also say, Vernon and I met at we were both doing a book signing in Atlanta. And having that conversation with him, it was also, some other people I was having conversations with, which ended up building a great community of individuals. So go to book signings. If there are topics and books from writers that you would not believe, that you can connect with them. Hey, okay, well, I'm struggling with diabetes. I'm struggling with suicidal thoughts. My book is Releasing My Trauma, the Roots of Self Sabotage. And I had so many men reach out to me who were sexually assaulted. And, they were like, your book changed my life. So, of course, that's for another day and another discussion. But finding people who resonate with what's going on with you, because trust me, Peanut, Pookie, and Ray Ray ain't the people you need to be talking to. I'm not trying to be funny, I'm not trying to be rude, but you need to be in a community of people who are elevated, who have overcome what you're overcoming, because sometimes individuals try to hold you back It's like a whole crab.
Mm.
They keep pulling you down. You have to find people who are trying to elevate you and want to see you out of those communities. Those are the people, and trust me, everybody I surround, all my friends, either they make more money than me, they got their own businesses, or they're doing something career wise, and they are my positive role models. And this is not just women, it's also men. So look at that. Get help, get therapy, get coaching, get the community, get out of your comfort zone, and get the help that you need. Um,
Yeah.
you have two gentlemen here that I don't work with men. As I said, I work with boys, and girls and women. But you got two men here that have given you their information. The ball is in your court if you're ready to make that change today. So please reach out to them. And also, if you've experienced sexual assault, a lot of men have, and they keep it to themselves because they don't want to be judged. It is not your fault. You are not to blame. Please understand that and realize that somebody took advantage of you. So get help for that. Don't live with that. Don't keep trying to sweep it under the rug because it will continuously come up because I am a victim of sexual assault myself. So get the help you need. Thank you again. Until next time, Mind, Health, and Wellness with LeJune. Thank you all who tuned in for this because, we can go on all day because there's so many topics and so many things we can touch on, but have to be respectful for each other's time. And maybe we'll schedule something before the month ends, see what other people's availability is. But thank you guys so much. Until next time, I'm LeJune, and we will see you guys soon.